Hi, my name is Randy Dawn, and I'm with Gold Derby. Today, we're here with Natalie Morales, co star of My Dead Friend Zoe, in which she plays the title character, the deceased friend and army pal of Merritt, played by Sonequa Martin Green. Zoe may be gone from reality, but she's still very present and real in Merritt's imagination and memory, which may be hindering her from getting over trauma. Natalie, you're playing that title character of the film, but you're only ever alive in flashbacks. What was it like to play that kind of character?
It was interesting because I think of it as sort of like three different versions of Zoe. One, she is the one that you see most is not a ghost exactly, but we've sort of been referring to it as a guilt demon, just like a manifestation of her survivor's guilt. And then you do see her alive, both during their service and after. And it was interesting because I wanted the two to be different. You know, one is a combination and amalgamation of the memories that Merritt had of Zoe and her mannerisms and the way she talked and her sense of humor, but it's also slightly exaggerated and slightly and its motivation is to keep her isolated and in this guilt-ridden state, right? So for me, that was strange because I've never played a like that's a non-human thing. So it had non-human motivations, and every scene that I did with her sort of depended on Merritt's state of mind and how best this guilt demon would what tactic it would use to keep her in that place. And sometimes it was comforting, and sometimes it was like, oh, stay home, this will be better. And sometimes it was mean, and sometimes it was heartbreaking, you know? And that was fun. It was really fun. It was definitely a challenge. And then what I tried to do was give a live Zoe a more full breadth of a person, you know, more vulnerable, more flawed, more real, and less. I think, you know, our memories of people who we've lost can be somewhat selective, especially if we have guilty feelings around them. And I think that the Zoe that Merritt remembers is bigger and like brassier than the real Zoe could be. I mean, I think that she could be that at times, but not all the time. And so I tried to make them the same but different, if that made any sense, you know?
Definitely. I'm wondering also, as an actor, you have to play this character in a kind of an energy bubble in a way because actors are used to bouncing off of one another in scenes, and of course there's the war scenes, where we actually she's still alive and everything. But a vast majority of the film, when we see Zoe, she's not. And you
Yeah.
have all these other actors around you who basically have to ignore you, except for Sonequa.
Yes. Well,
Uh,
also sometimes Sonequa.
Right, exactly, because she's sometimes
Yeah,
consciously ignoring you. I,
exactly. Yeah.
how was that as an actor to sort of not have that energy to bounce off of?
Um, It it makes the part of me that is a little impish excited because I like to sort of see how I can if I can get a laugh from someone when they're not supposed to laugh. Not that I was trying to make people break or anything, but it's a challenge which I like and I take on. Um, but yeah, you are used to getting feedback and you know, even the way that Merritt relates to Zoe is not she knows what she is. She's not sometimes they relate to each other as friends sometimes, but most of the time she is like upset that she's still around, right? So it's this like persistent thing that I had to do and always sort of maintain that motivation in mind, which shifted in tactic, but was always to manipulate this person into staying in this dark place, you know?
So, what was it that actually drew you to the script and the story initially?
Definitely Kyle. Kyle Hoffman Stokes, who co-wrote and directed the script, this is his story. He says it's 93.5 exactly the same of what happened to him. And he wrote me a letter. He wrote all of us a letter actually before the film and told us about his story and what had happened to him and the friends that he had lost. Zoe is sort of based on two platoon mates that he lost, and Merritt is Kyle. Dale is Kyle's grandfather. Like it's directly his story. It's exactly how he felt. He ran all the time, and drank, and it was certainly inspiring to hear what his mission was, which was to help people. Can you hear me still? Did I
I
lose
can.
my?
Nope, I can totally hear you. You're all
Okay.
good.
Um, yeah, it was to help people, and that was inspiring to me because I think one of the impact partners for this movie is Everytown for Gun Safety, which is an organization that I have worked with for a long time, and Kyle had also worked with, and I I felt just very moved by his story and what he wanted to do with it, which is to if this movie could even get one person to talk about what's going on with them, then we've been successful in what we tried to do. And from the feedback that we've gotten from several people, veterans and non-veterans alike, um, it it certainly are already has, and I can't tell you how moving and incredible it has been to talk to so many people after some of these screenings that we've had who don't expect to be um, affected by this film in the way that they are. And I think the reason that they might be is because it's really Kyle's story, and it comes from a place of truth, and that truth is, of course, comedic and varying. I think that that's what I also was drawn to about this movie is that it's a story about grief and loss, but grief and loss are often depicted so humorlessly, and that's not how it is in real life. At least not for me. I think that life is a combination of things. So that was also attracted to me. It didn't seem like this just like, glum fest. Because I don't think that makes people want to watch it. So I was excited that it had this aspect to it that I found really entertaining and sort of like some medicine, some sugar to make the medicine go down. Um,
Yeah, understood. I mean, I one of the things that really struck me as I was watching the film, which I went into cold because I wanted to not know backstory. I wanted to see film and
mhm.
then read about it later. And I could tell even as the film was progressing that there's this wonderful texture to the language and sort of real elements that don't feel like you've seen them a million times before. And I thought to myself, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
was wearing like Kyle's pants from camo pants from the army. Like we used a lot of his actual stuff.
That is so interesting. I'm
Yeah.
fascinated by that. I'm also fascinated. Did he ever tell you why, for example, this is his story, and when we see real people at the end of the film in the credits that we're connecting to that come from his story, he is obviously a guy, but this story is about two women. Did he ever
Yeah.
explain to you why he did the gender flip on that one?
Yes, and it's something that I love. I think he did this project that, forgive me, I can't remember the name of it, but he interviewed, I think, like close to 1,000 veterans and of all different backgrounds, all different wars, all different times of service, men and women. And when he served in, I think it was Iraq, he did not serve with women because women were not allowed to be in that part of the army yet. So when he interviewed all these women, he was just sort of blown away and also kind of upset that their stories were not broadly told and that they weren't represented as well in media. And I think he was like, you know, he wanted his story to be half his and half everyone else's. And I think this I haven't confirmed with him. I imagine that it would be easier to to do to tell a story so personally and direct it and be so involved if you can remove it a little bit from yourself. If you are looking at the person representing you and the person representing your dead friend and have them look a little different than you. I imagine that that is also helpful, but truly, I think that he just was like, you know what? There's enough movies about white guys in the army. Why can't I make this story about it's about people, right? It doesn't matter even if you are a veteran. Like I truly don't think of this as like an art, like it's only for veterans and only army people will relate to it. And I think he wanted to do that as well and just kind of make it more universal in that way and show that it could be, even though it was based on his story.
Do you have people in your life or your family that really helped you relate to the experience of Merritt and Zoe? I mean, did this have a personal connection for you?
I do have some family members that were in the service, but they were men. So it was slightly different. And Kyle's experience is uh, his own and not necessarily entirely unique, but unique to him. And I think what was most helpful was speaking to him about his friends and his story. I mean, I think Sonequa had a bit more to do with the PTSD part of it than I did. I had a bit, but she had more. Um, and we also, like you said, 90% of our cast are veterans. They're actors who happen to be veterans, and we talk to them a lot, especially the women. And they there's a bunch of them who are in a sort of therapy group in the movie, and they tell some stories, and all the stories they tell are their real stories. That was not scripted. So it was really interesting to hear from them. But, as an actor, I'm never going to know what that's actually like, but I'm also never going to know what it's like to be a doctor. I'm also never going to know what it's like to be a lawyer or an alien. But my job is to put the person at the forefront and have it be like, this is a person who just happened to go through these things and had these experiences and had these circumstances and put myself in the place of what I think that would be like. And it was certainly helpful to speak to people who had been in situations similar, but I'll never know. I'll never know what it's like, as with anything else, But it was really, really helpful to speak to them. But definitely, I mean, Kyle showed me videos that he took of his friends who died, who Zoe was based on, and not that I was doing an impression of them at all, but it was helpful to see what they were like.
Understood. There's one point in the film where Zoe asks Merritt whether she thinks that they would have been friends outside of the army, because
Hmm.
their friendship is so key here. It's not just, oh, we're in this horrible war situation.
Yeah.
Merritt sort of insists that they would. Yeah, of course, of course. What do you really think?
I loved that part of the movie because um, I think that I think that you know, this is not by any means some sort of like army propaganda film. And in fact, it may be the other direction. But I think that's something I also don't see a lot in movies about veterans or where veterans or people who are in service are main characters, especially in the United States, or especially sort of modern day, is that people have all sorts of reasons for joining. And of course, like in Vietnam, some of them did not choose to join, right? Most of them didn't. Um, and I think that scene was really interesting for both me and Sonequa to play because it it shows two people understanding something in very different ways. And I think that as the viewer, you kind of see both their points of view, and you don't understand that Zoe desperately needs her to like. Merritt doesn't understand that Zoe needs her to say yes because that she has nothing outside of this, and Merritt doesn't quite hear that or get that, and she's just like, "Of course, what are you talking about?" She sees it as like, yeah, we'll be friends. Like, of course. But she's thinking of her life outside as all the other things she wants to do, and Zoe only has that to hold on to. Um, I see Zoe as a character who enlisted because there was not many other options for her, and there's a lot of people like that in the United States, whether it's that they don't have a home, or they need to go to college, or they don't have anywhere any job or resources. And of course, a lot of people do find purpose and find that they end up liking it, but I know for a fact that there are people that don't and are just doing it because it's a job that they have to do. And I think for Zoe in particular, she is sort of dreading having to go home because she knows there's nothing there for her. And if she could just hold on to Merritt, um, she would she thinks she would be okay. Of course, I think Zoe had a lot more work to do that she couldn't do or didn't do, but and it's also, not entirely up to Merritt to save her. But I think that I loved that scene because I loved that Merritt understood it in a different way. Like when she goes like, "Oh, are we just going to be like talk and then it'll change into Facebook messages?" Like Merritt doesn't hear that as horrible. She hears that as like, yeah, friendships can evolve and change and be many things. That's not necessarily bad. Like we'll still keep in touch. It'll be great. And for Zoe, that's like the worst thing she could possibly hear. Um, so I loved that. It felt like a real talk that two friends might have in that kind of situation. And I thought that was it's one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Yeah, it gets to something that I think we don't necessarily expect the movie is going to go in that direction, but that is at the key or at the heart of what happens next to both of them.
Yeah.
And like you were saying earlier, this isn't an army propaganda film by any means, and not wanting to spoil anything, but the movie is also trying to share this message about how our country fails its veterans
Hmm.
after they return. And, why do you think we put so much emphasis in this country on recruiting, but not necessarily helping soldiers once they're returned?
Boy, Randy, I could talk about this all day. I I don't know. I think there's some version of this that I'm messing up that somebody has said that I can't remember who it is, but it's like the mark of a good country and of a country that's doing well is how well it treats its poor, how well it treats its the people that are needy. And we don't do that well. We don't do that well in the States. And I think there's a lack of empathy, there's a selfishness um, that has permeated us. I still believe there are many, many good people, most, if not many. I honestly believe that. Maybe because I have to. But I think it's a similar thing about how people put a lot of emphasis on uh on adopting and how, oh, the idea of like anti-abortion, but they don't really care about kids once they're in the program. It seems like hypocritical to me to not take care of your veterans. And I'm personally am very anti-war, but I'm very pro people. And I think that, like I said, people join the service for all sorts of different reasons, and it's actually not up to me to judge them or decide what they do is right. What's up to me is to like take care of my fellow human, especially if they're in need and especially if they have physical or mental damage from what we sent them to do. um and I do wish it was different. And there are, as I said, there's impact partners on this film that are three different organizations that do dedicate themselves to help all sorts of people, but specifically veterans. And there are many other organizations. So there are people trying to help. And what we're trying to do with this movie is tell people, veterans or not, that if you're going through a difficult time, that there are people who will listen, and that you should talk about it. And hopefully that is the message that gets across. I think we have to rely on each other and not the government for many, many things. And I that's what we're trying to do.
Okay. I wanted to quickly pivot a little bit away from the movie just a minute, but a little bit to more to your own specific career. You are so busy, it seems like. Grey's Anatomy, Harley Quinn, you got this movie Summer of '69 coming up. Is this kind of the dream to be in like busy in multiple areas, or were you sort of like, nah, I'd really just rather have one regular gig that goes for 20 years?
No, I think I'd be bored if I just had one regular gig. I like to do all sorts of different things. I don't like to repeat myself. The problem is I also like to sleep and relax. That is the problem. I like to be home. I like to be with my dogs. But I'm very thankful that this has happened to me. And of course, like I'll say I look busier than I am, as we all do because of social media. Like, you know, we shot this movie a year and a half ago. So it feels like it all happens at the same time, but it doesn't. And I think that's important to say out loud because I think that there's many people in creative fields who feel like other people are constantly working and they're not. But that's just an illusion. I'm happy that I have had work and I'm very thankful that I have had work. But I'm certainly in that space in my life where I'm like, oh, I hope I work again, but I think I will. I think I will. But I think all creative people who are not already rich have that in common where they they um they do it for a living. I think to answer your question about what my dream is to make my own, continue to make my own things, things that I write and produce and direct, and maybe star in. Those are my favorite things to do, and I have a few of those in the works. And that's really my dream. I would like to continue to do that. I love acting. I love saying other people's words. I love directing. I think I like saying, I would love to be acting in something that I personally wrote and wanted to put out there. That'd be fun. I've done it a few times, but I'd like to continue to do it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a terrific conversation and good
Thank
luck
you,
with
Randy.
the
So nice talking to you. Thank you.
very nice talking to you.